Hey, Ranger fans, welcome to It's the Day Before Jim's Birthday edition of the Rink Rap Podcast presented by Forever Blueshirts. Thanks for joining us again this week. And indeed, it is my birthday tomorrow on Friday. And I got a big weekend planned. Let's see, tomorrow I'll be writing post-game Ranger Utah stories for Forever Blueshirts. So I'll be working most of the day, but I am going to work in a little bit of fun later in the day, happy hour and a little dinner, nice little dinner in the city. So got some plans all set for my birthday on Friday night. And then it's back to work on Saturday. Hey, Rangers play Saturday, big game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then also an important game, maybe not as big as against Columbus, but they'll be on the road against Montreal on Sunday. So plenty of work to be done there with that for Forever Blueshirts. But I'll also be broadcasting a couple games this weekend as well. Saturday, I'll be down in Princeton on ESPN Plus, working the Princeton Colgate game, men's hockey. And then on Sunday afternoon, I'll be up in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I'll be broadcasting some minor league hockey, the single A FPHL HC Venom taking on the Binghamton Black Bears. So I'll be broadcasting that as well. So a little college hockey, a little minor league hockey, and a lot of Rangers hockey for my birthday weekend. But yeah, it's the day before Jim's birthday edition of Rink Rap. Now, we're also going to get into a whole bunch of other things that are not related to my birthday. Like, first of all, hope you subscribe here to the Forever Blueshirts YouTube channel. Please do that. And then be a part of the family here. Join us, at least every week, if not more often. Last week, we did a couple shows. We had Dennis Bernstein join us to talk about the Arthur Kaliev being claimed off waivers. And then we had EJ Raddick of NHL Network joined us, talked about a whole bunch of topics, including his working the World Junior Championships and getting his firsthand take on Ranger prospects Gabe Perreault and Drew Fortescue. So we do a lot of cool stuff here. This week I'm going to fly solo. It's my birthday. I don't want to share it with anybody, except with you, of course. But there's plenty to talk about, and we're going to get to all that. I'll tell you one thing, too. I'm trying to think warm thoughts right now. I know it's hockey season. It's January. Of course, it's supposed to be cold. I went out to my car this morning and turned it on to, heat it up before I had to take it to the train station. And I saw it was 18 degrees. Man, that's just deflating. Like, I know it felt cold when I walked out the door, but yeah, 18 degrees. Seeing the digits there, yeah, man. So I was trying to think warm thoughts before I did the podcast today. So I put on my Pura Vida hat from Costa Rica. Love me some Costa Rica. Would love me some Costa Rica beach time right about now. Yeah, but I'm here in New York, but that's okay. Love Costa Rica. Pura Vida. It's kind of the national theme, if you will, in Costa Rica. And I got a little spring training on my mind. So I got my New York Mets zip up as well. And thinking ahead, thinking warm thoughts to baseball season and to spring training, which is about a month away. But there's also a tie-in with the Mets, too. I pulled this on. And I started thinking about Pete Alonso and his situation with the Mets. And there is a Ranger tie-in here as we kick off our hockey talk on the podcast today. The Mets and Pete Alonso, that contract situation, the Mets are in the driver's seat right now. The market is drying up for Pete Alonso. Scott Boras is trying to save face. Alonso probably not happy right now with the Mets playing hardball with him. But I don't hear people up in arms, and I don't hear people saying, oh, what is this going to do to the Mets clubhouse if they don't bring Pete Alonso back? And we're talking about a guy that's a pretty iconic New York Met. I know he's never won a World Series, never even, played in one, but he's a pretty iconic New York Met. You look at the history of Mets position players, like it's not the greatest list. It doesn't really stand out at you. David Wright, Darryl Strawberry, Pete Alonso. Those are probably your three greatest position players that have come up and spent considerable time with the organizations. All their other great position players were guys that they acquired. They were free agents, like a guy like Carlos Beltran, for example, or they were, players they picked up in trades. Mike Piazza, the best example there. Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter. Most of the great guys that have come up in this organization have been pitchers. Tom Seaver at the top of that list. Jerry Koosman, Doc Gooden, Jacob deGrom. Most of those guys, though, in fact, all of those guys never played their entire careers with the Mets. They all got moved on and to varying levels of, anger from the fan base. So anyway, I bring this up because here you have Pete Alonso in this stalemate right now with the Mets, probably 50-50, whether he returns or doesn't return as a free agent. Apparently the Mets putting the squeeze on him, saying, hey, we need a decision. We can do a short-term deal. We got to come together on the money, but let's do it sooner rather than later because we can't keep missing out on other options if we have to replace you in the lineup, if you're not coming back. But I don't hear this hue and cry from the Met fan. There are people that are pissed off and that are concerned, we can't let the polar bear go, and how can you do this to Pete? But I don't hear anybody really saying, what's this going to do to the Mets clubhouse? And why do I bring that up? Because Ranger fans, the wringing of the hands, and even, NHL insiders and experts, people around the league, people I've spoken with, people, stories we've read and everything. There's been a lot of harping on, boy, that Ranger locker room. What did, how Chris Drury treated Barclay Goodrow last summer and Jacob Trouba last summer and eventually this season, look how that's affected the locker room. Now, there have been other people I've spoken to that debunk that. Say, players might be irritated, pissed. Maybe they're not crazy about Drury, but it shouldn't really affect how they play the game. So nobody's talking about that with Pete Alonso. The Mets are going to carry on one way or the other, whether he's there or not. I think the fans, for the most part, probably want to see him back. Popular guy. He's certainly a lot more popular than Jacob Trouba, Barclay Goodrow, or even Capo Caco ever were, and accomplished a lot more than any of those three guys did with the Rangers. But yet we spent so much energy talking this season about, the general manager and how he treated this guy, that guy. And, now they're giving up on Caco and they trade him. And what does that do to the room and all that? Listen, I know they had a really good room last year. And that was one of the reasons why they were really good. President's Trophy winners, 2 wins shy of reaching the Cup final. That's a really good room. And Trouba played a big part in that. Caco, popular guy in that room as well. Goodrow was a really good leader, really well-respected guy. So I get it. You pluck guys out like that, and it doesn't help the situation. But again, should there have been a 4-15-0 collapse by the New York Rangers in November and December because of the GM? Because had the GM acted? I don't think so. I think the team was just playing crappy hockey. Maybe you can put in some of these, factor in some of the, they're irritated with management or whatever. That's not the overriding reason that they were 4-15-0. They were just playing crap hockey. Terrible attention to detail, dispassionate, discoordinated, discordant, I guess is the better word to use. And I think that was a carryover from as the playoffs progressed last year, and certainly what we saw against the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final. And it just got exacerbated, and then it was like the snowball rolling down the hill. All right. So anyway, that's just like a side point I wanted to get to. We do have the trade deadline coming up on March 7th. So, what the Rangers will do in this next month, probably even less than that, the next 3 weeks heading into the Four Nations tournament, probably is going to determine the path for Chris Drury. Because if you look at the timeline, these next 3 weeks, Rangers play 12 games before they're off for the break for the Four Nations tournament. 8 of them are at home. Many of them are against Eastern Conference teams that are above them in the standings. For example, they play the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yes, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who currently hold the second wild card in the East. Unbelievable, amazing story if you're a hockey fan. Not a great one if you're a hardcore Ranger fan and you just don't care about the rest of the league. I get it. You're probably pretty pissed off that a team that should be nowhere near the Stanley Cup playoff race is actually in the second wild card, and you, the mighty New York Rangers, are looking up at them right now, as of this podcast, 5 points behind the Blue Jackets. Well, Rangers can start reversing things, reversing trend. And we've seen them play much better as of late, right? They're 4-1-2 in their last 7. The 2 losses easily could have been wins, in each case. Up 3-0 on the Dallas Stars, up 4-3 late in that game against the Stars. You allow the tying goal late, you lose it in overtime. And the Colorado game the other day, Tuesday, they were playing a heck of a game. Rangers may not have been getting a ton of scoring chances, but it seemed like every scoring chance they had was a grade A, right? How many breakaways? Edstrom, breakaway 2 minutes into the game. Lafreniere had a breakaway. Carrick scored on a breakaway. Edstrom scored off a 2-on-1 rush. Mika could have won the game in overtime. He had a breakaway. I mean, they had so many great looks, great opportunities. I thought they played a heck of a game defensively against a real good offensive team, but they allow the late goal. They don't score on the power play in overtime. Mika doesn't score on the breakaway in overtime, and they ended up losing. So those are their 2 losses in the last 7 games, but they still got a point in each game. So 4-1-2 in their last 7, and certainly trending in the right direction. And I think just by eye test, you got to like what you see from the Rangers. Their defensive commitment, their compete level, their compete level's night and day from where it was in November and December. Getting contributions up and down the lineup. The fourth line's been carrying them offensively the last couple of games. They still need more consistency, from their top 6, really top 9 players. I wrote about that in the 3 things to look for in the game against Utah on Thursday. So things are trending good for the Rangers. This next stretch, though, is going to decide what Chris Drury and the Rangers do at the deadline, because when you come back from the break, you've got 2 weeks until the March 7th deadline. I don't think Chris Drury is going to wait for those final 2 weeks to make up his final decision on, hey, we're going to move this guy, or we're going to look to build in, and we're going to go for it. These guys have earned the opportunity. I mean, it will factor into the decision, but I really think these next 12 games heading into the 4 Nations is crucial for the Rangers to show management that, hey, invest in us. Let's be buyers. Let's go for this thing. We're the New York Rangers, and we can make a run here, because I believe they can make the playoffs. We talked about this last week when I had EJ on later last week, and then earlier last week, same conversation with Dennis Bernstein, and I laid it out there. I think this team can make the playoffs. They've got the talent to do it. Igor now is back. He's healthy, looks good in his first 3 games back. So that's key. And the other thing is, who scares you? Who scares you that's ahead of the Rangers in the standings? I get it. I get the math. And, how difficult it is to leapfrog not only, 1 or 2 teams, but 5 or 6 teams to get into a playoff spot over the course of a half season. I think they can do it. There's nobody ahead of them that scares me. And that includes the Boston Bruins, who right now are the top wild card team in the Eastern Conference, 6 points ahead of the Rangers. Well, guess what? Included in the 12 games before the 4 Nations, 2 games against the Boston Bruins, 1 at home and 1 on the road. Listen, right now, the Rangers are a better team than the Boston Bruins. And Bruins are beat up, too. A couple big injuries, Charlie McAvoy sidelined. But listen, Rangers have dealt with their injuries, too. Rangers right now, better team than Boston, I think. Boston could right themselves. There's a lot of talent there. Really good coach, I think. So that stretch of games coming up is massive for the Rangers. I mean, look at the teams they play. Let's just talk about the next 5 games to begin with, okay? The next 5 games, starting with Utah on Thursday night, Columbus at home on Saturday, at Montreal Sunday, and then next week, home games against Ottawa and Philadelphia, okay? Philly, Ottawa, Montreal, Columbus, all in the Eastern Conference. Each one of them sits above the Rangers in the standings. Not one of those teams should scare the Rangers. So I heard Johnny Lazarus, who's been on this show and does a great job at Daily Faceoff and Morning Cup of Hockey and, all the cool stuff that he does. Johnny was on NHL Network and they asked him, so this 5-game stretch coming up for the Rangers, they should go 5-0, right? And Johnny's laughing. He said, have you watched the team this year? Have you watched the Rangers? Like even when they've been good, they haven't been great. What makes you think they're going to reel off a 5-game winning streak, even though that competition does not scare you? Like, if there's a section in their schedule that you think the Rangers can really go on a run, win 5 in a row, it's this one. Utah, the 2 wins in their last 11 games. Columbus, listen, playing great hockey. They have earned the right to be in a wild card spot right now. And you know what? Maybe there's a little fairy dust going on. Maybe there's a little magic going on with the Blue Jackets this year. If you're the Rangers, man, you could short circuit that quickly. Columbus doesn't win on the road. That's their big Achilles heel. Rangers could really lay down the law on them Saturday at the Garden. That is a massive game. It's crazy to think. Beginning of the season, we've been pointing to, when do they play the Hurricanes next? When do they play the Devils next? The Panthers, top teams in the conference. Oh, no. We kind of changed our focus here. It's Rangers Blue Jackets, and it's big, and it's winnable. Winnable. The Montreal Sunday. Hey, listen, Montreal's played some really good hockey as of late, kind of coinciding with Patrick Laine coming back in the lineup. The good trade, I thought, really good trade for William Carrier. Great play by the kid Hudson on defense. That's an exciting team. I don't think their time is now. I don't think they're a playoff team. And if I think the Rangers are a playoff team, then that's a game you got to win at the Bell Center on Sunday. Then you got Ottawa, up and down and up and down, terrible, losing streak. And then, they lose Linus Ullmark, to injury. And then they right themselves. They have battled adversity and come out on the other side of it. They're ahead of the Rangers too. Is this young team finally coming together? Are they going to hold it together till Ullmark comes back? But they're susceptible. Again, you're the Rangers. Take it to them. On your home ice, take it to them. You have to. And then the Philadelphia Flyers, another wildly inconsistent team. To me, they're not a playoff team, but you know what? They got a little bit playoff battle tested last year. They didn't make the playoffs. They were fighting really into the last, days of the season for that second wild card in the East. So, they're a little bit battle tested there. And some of the young players are coming together. I just don't like their goaltending. And again, the Rangers are a better team. So circling back to Johnny. Johnny said, have you been watching this team? 5-0, are you crazy? Johnny laid it out at 2-2-1. The Rangers go 2-2-1 and just kind of hold serve against these 5 teams. That doesn't bode well, my opinion. I think this has to be a 4-1 stretch for the Rangers. They do that, they're going to set themselves up nicely. They're going to start leapfrogging teams. They're going to be right in the mix. 4-1 out of these next 5 games. Now, then after that, you close out the month at home against Colorado and Carolina. Okay, 2 of the better teams in the league. You just saw Colorado, though, the other day. And for most of that game, the Rangers were the better team on the road. The Rangers were a better team. Blocked 22 shots. Really, for the most part, limited, McKinnon and Rantanen, Makar. Rangers did a really, really good job. They allowed the late goal. I'm sure Igor wants that one back. He made the initial save, but let it leak through him. And Lehkonen, rams it into the back of the net. And then, as I mentioned, they failed to score on the power play. The Rangers do. Mika misses on a breakaway. And, and then Devon Taves sends them home losers. But Rangers were a better team for much of that game. So you can argue they at least played with Colorado, probably played better than Colorado. I think they played better than Colorado, in that game. So, but still, that's a tough opponent. And you followed it up with Carolina, who's been a little bit up and down lately. They're still, they got to figure out their goaltending. Some of their hot guys, Martin Necas is a great example. They've kind of cooled off. So Carolina doesn't look like a world beater, but again, still one of the better teams in the league. Always a tough game. So you got those two tough games to close out the month. Then you're 5 games in 8 days before you get to February 8th, which is where the Four Nations face-off breaks off. You have 3 at home, 2 on the road. You start at Boston. I already talked about that. Winnable. Home to Vegas. That's going to be tough, but hey, you just beat Vegas in Vegas. The 2-1 game, you shut them down. One of the best games the Rangers have played all season. But okay, yeah, that's going to be a tough one for sure. They get Boston at home, winnable. You get the Pittsburgh Penguins, a complete mess. I know Sid's having a great year, but Penguins are a complete mess. They just placed Tristan Jarry on waivers. They really don't have a goalie, there now. Nobody they can rely on. Coach Sullivan is questioning their commitment and work ethic and this, that, and the other thing. Evgeny Malkin went to the media, talked about, how the team's commitment is not there. That's a team that team could finish last. They really could. So you got them, and then you close on the 8th with a massive game in Columbus against the Blue Jackets. Again, I laugh saying that, right? Massive game. Here we are, playoff race is on, and we're talking about Rangers Blue Jackets. Well, guess what? That's the team you're hunting right now. And I'm not sure. I think it's an amazing story, but I'm not sure Columbus stays up in that upper echelon in a playoff spot. And the Rangers can do something about it. You get them Saturday, you get them February 8th. That's twice in 12 game span before the Four Nations face off. Got to win them both. Have to. Boston, probably the same thing. But okay, let's say you split with Boston. But you got to take those 2 games from Columbus. And in this next 5 game stretch, Utah, Columbus, Montreal, Ottawa, Philly, 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. Then I think we're talking. And if that's the case, well, Chris Drury then probably has to be hunting to make this team better. So instead of maybe looking to offload Chris Kreider, if he's even still doing that, seeing if there's somewhere Mika Zibanejad would accept a trade to, still knocking on the door, in Vancouver, maybe trying to get JT Miller. Maybe the Rangers really kind of put the chips to the middle again and say, all right, so Joe Sakic, what's this we're hearing about Mikko Rantanen being available? I don't see it. I know the contract talks aren't going anywhere, and Mikko Rantanen's going to be the sexy name before the deadline. So I throw his name out there. I don't think they're shading Mikko Rantanen, but if you're the Rangers, and they are, would you push your chips to the table, give up prospects, picks, and, for salary reasons, you'd have to give up somebody major off your roster, and maybe that's Mika, for Rantanen, who can become a free agent at the end of the year? Or do you just wait if you really want him? And why wouldn't you? Wait for him to become a free agent if he does. If for some reason Colorado doesn't sign him before July 1. Anyway, so that's just a guy there, to mention. What do you do though? You need a scoring wing in the top 6. Shocker. Because every trade deadline since Chris Drury's been GM, they've been searching for that elusive guy to fit in. Frank Vetrano did in 2022. He was a really good fit. Who's this year's Frank Vetrano? 23 before the deadline. Rangers added 2 veterans, Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, Stanley Cup winners, future Hall of Famer in the case of Patrick Kane. It seemed to be the thing to do, and the Rangers flamed out in the first round. Kane was hurt. He wasn't 100%. Last year, forget it. Jack Roslovic was not the answer. But okay, so here we are. If the Rangers take 4 out of 5 here, if the Rangers, let's see, over the next 12 games, that's 24 points. Let's say they get 18, 17 points in the next 12 games. They'll probably be right there. They'll probably be knocking on the door of a playoff spot, right? You have to help your team then, right? You're the New York Rangers. You got your $11.5 million goalie. You've got your $11 million wing in Artemi Panarin. Adam Fox, $9.5 million. You've invested. You were 2 wins shy of going to the Stanley Cup final last year. You got to push the chips in. Now if they go 500 in this stretch, the Rangers say, all right, listen, we're still going to do our best here, but, we may have to trade Ryan Lindgren. He's a UFA at the end of the year. Maybe we listen on Keandre Miller because we don't know what we want to do with Key. Will Borgen's been really nice pickup, but you know what? He's a UFA at the end of the year. Do we consider trading him? Zach Jones, can he get us a draft pick or two? Jimmy Vesey, the coach doesn't want to play him anymore anyway. We've got younger guys. We've got Kaliev now. We've got Berard, maybe Othman we can bring up, play that, bottom 6 role on the wing. Maybe then we really go serious about thinking about trading Kreider or Zibanejad. There are options there. But it's this 12-game stretch before the 4 nations that's going to really decide what the Rangers do. If I'm going to throw you out one name, and it's not going to be a top forward. Still got to figure out who that fit might be. And again, I don't think it's going to be Mikko Rantanen. If they go heavy into, hey, we've got a shot here, make the playoffs, we can make a run. I'll tell you a guy that I like that's out there is Mario Ferraro, defenseman, San Jose Sharks, 26 years old, makes about $3.25 million, has another year left on his contract. Not a sexy guy, but reliable, steady, good defensively. Boy, I think he could step in and take that Ryan Lindgren role. Now, whether you think he's a fit with Adam Fox on the top pair or if he's more of a second pair guy, you can argue that. But I think he's a top 4 defenseman. I don't think it would take a ton, though the prices tend to skyrocket around the trade deadline for any defenseman, much less one that still has term on his contract and is good. But that's a type guy that will help you this year. Even if you're going for a playoff spot, he's a fit and then can help you next year because he'd still be signed, reasonable cap hit, and the guy can play. Another guy I like, and he would be a rental, is Marcus Pettersson. I'm focusing on defensemen here because, again, the Rangers have some big decisions to make on defensemen before the deadline. Do you let it play out with Lindgren? Possibly, likely lose him or let him walk for nothing as a UFA at the end of the year. I don't see the Rangers committing a long-term deal to him. Keandre Miller. Have you decided on him that, he's an RFA with arbitration rights? Are we really going to pay him what he's going to want at the end of the year? Or, because there's probably going to be interest in Keandre Miller around the league, do we see what we can get back? Well, if that's the case, that's 2 left defensemen. Not saying both would go, but just making the argument. Marcus Pettersson, nice fit. I think a steady stay-at-home defenseman. I think the Penguins are going to be out of it. I think they would trade him even within the division. That's just me. That's not coming from Kyle Dubas. Mario Ferraro from San Jose, an easier trade because not in division, but a more difficult trade because it probably would take more to get him, with term left on his contract. Anyway, all of this comes with saying that the next 12 games are vital for the New York Rangers and will turn the hand to Chris Drury one way or the other. Yep, we're going to be buyers, but we're going to be sellers. Or, you know what, we'll tweak around the edges here, but we're not going to do anything massive either way because, hey, these teams in front of the Rangers are mediocre. We're mediocre, but we're probably good enough to sneak in. And once we're in, hey, we've got Igor, you know the story. So that's where we're at as of today, the day before my birthday. Rangers, Utah tonight, the first visit to the Beehive State. And I'm going to tell you right now that before I wrote my preview story for the game on Thursday night, I had no idea that Utah was the Beehive State. None. No idea. Never heard that once before in my life. But I researched it. I wanted to put it into the story, kind of get it in the headline. Beehive State. All right. Now I know. Anyway, Rangers got to finish off that road trip with a big win tonight. You take 5 of 6 points on this road trip out west. Even though you kicked away a point against Colorado, you take it. And then you go back home and you got the big game against Columbus on Saturday. So that's where the Rangers are right now. Continue to follow me on X at Jim Cerny. Follow us at Forever Blueshirts. That's with the Forever Blueshirts on X as well. And of course, follow us on the website, foreverblueshirts.com. Subscribe to the podcast. We'll be back next week. I think next week, we'll go with the guests, kind of bounce some ideas off somebody, and we'll have a little bit better idea where the Rangers are, because they'll be, halfway through or more than halfway through this 5-game stretch. You would have had the Utah game behind us, the Columbus game behind us, the Montreal game behind us before we reconvene again with the podcast next week. So we'll see where we are then. Enjoy your hockey this weekend. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. Really appreciate it. No gifts necessary unless you feel like you must. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week on the Rink Rap Podcast presented by Forever Blueshirts.